Log entry 4721.3, Standard Galactic Cycle. Dr. Pax'lori recording. The subject of today's examination is yet another unremarkable bipedal species from some backwater planet in the Orion Spur. Hardly worth mentioning. But protocol demands documentation of all newly contacted sentient species. So here we are. I sighed dramatically, adjusting my six-fingered appendages on the hover console. 27 standard cycles at the Galactic Science Academy had reduced my expectations to almost nothing. After you've studied the 16-hearted Krongan slug dancers and the telepathic crystal entities of Betelgeuse VI, most species seem well boring. Computer. Begin standard physiological assessment of specimen. I glanced at my notes. Human. Planet designation. Earth. Subject name Marcus Bennett. The examination chamber hummed to life. Behind the transparent observation wall, the human sat on the examination platform, looking around with that annoyingly alert expression that mammals often display. Pink-skinned, fur concentrated oddly on the top of the head and face, bilateral symmetry, four limbs, yawn. I've seen this basic template 1,000 times across the galaxy. Hello? Dr. Pax'lori? Am I saying that right? The creature waved at me through the partition. Any chance I could get some coffee? Or whatever passes for caffeine around here. I clicked my mandibles in irritation. It's pronounced Pax'lori, and no, we don't contaminate baseline physiological assessments with stimulants. I turned to my assistant, drone technician Blip, who was practically vibrating with excitement. What's gotten into you? It's my first human, Dr. Pax'lori. The Academy has been trying to establish formal contact for decades. Their transmissions have been fascinating. They have over 7,000 languages, and they fight wars over the most bizarre things and… Save your anthropological fan club nonsense for Dr. Narrovine's department, I interrupted. Here we deal in hard science, not cultural curiosities. I returned to my console, ignoring both Blip's deflated posture and the human's persistent waving. Director Motal had personally assigned me this specimen, probably as punishment for that incident with the Arcturian ambassador's ceremonial tentacle sheaths. Whatever. I'd run the standard tests, file my report concluding yet another carbon-based organism with unexceptional attributes, and move on to something actually interesting. Beginning baseline assessment. Gravity calibrated to subject's homeworld. Atmospheric composition matched. Temperature set to HM. Rather narrow viable range. Surprising they achieved spaceflight with such environmental limitations. The human Marcus stood up and stretched, revealing absolutely none of the anatomical surprises that would make this assignment worthwhile. No hidden appendages, no secondary respiration system, not even decent natural armor. Hey doc, how long is this gonna take? I've got a date with a vending machine. The guys at the Diplomatic Corps said you've got something that tastes almost exactly like cheese puffs, and I'm starving. I activated the intercom. Subject displays typical mammalian preoccupation with regular caloric intake. Please remain still and silent for optimal assessment. The human grinned, a disturbing baring of blunt teeth that apparently indicated amusement rather than aggression. Whatever you say, Doc. But fair warning, I get chatty when I'm bored. Little did I know that this unremarkable creature would soon become the bane of my professional existence, demolish several of my published theories, and eventually drive me to question everything I thought I knew about xenobiology. Day 2 of human physiological assessment, I dictated into my recorder while staring through the observation window. Subject shows no abnormalities in baseline metrics. Beginning standard endurance protocol series alpha. The testing chamber had been reconfigured overnight for our first real assessment. Most species breeze through this initial battery. It's designed to establish minimum competency thresholds, not push boundaries. Even the gelatinous Thruvians, who can barely maintain solid form for more than 6 hours, manage to complete these tests without complaint. All right, Mr. Bennett. We'll start with basic cardiovascular stress assessment. Please step onto the treadmill apparatus, I instructed through the speaker. The human bounded over to the equipment with an inexplicable spring in his step. Morning, Doc. Call me Marcus, please. Mr. Bennett is my father. Great sleep last night. These anti-grav beds are fantastic. Say, is that breakfast? He pointed to the nutrient cylinder being dispensed from the wall unit. I sighed. Standard nutritional supplement calibrated to your species' requirements. Please consume it before testing begins. The human sniffed the cylinder suspiciously, then shrugged and gulped it down. His face contorted into an expression I would later learn meant disgusted but tolerating. Tastes like someone liquefied a health textbook. But I've had worse protein shakes. I ignored the incomprehensible statement and began the testing sequence. To my mild surprise, the human completed the 2-hour cardiovascular assessment without showing signs of significant fatigue. His vital signs remained stable, and more annoyingly, he continued talking the entire time. So then my buddy Tom says, "That's not a space squid, that's my mother-in-law." Ha ha ha. Get it? Because wait, do you guys have mothers-in-law out here in space? I maintained my professional demeanor. Please focus on the task, not conversation. Marcus shrugged. Multitasking helps pass the time. By the afternoon cycle, we'd progressed to more specialized tests. The results were perplexing. The human's joint flexibility was nothing extraordinary, but his connective tissue showed remarkable resilience to repeated stress. More unusual was his cheerful attitude, despite increasing test difficulty. Beginning sleep deprivation assessment, I announced on the 3rd day. Most species show significant performance degradation after missing one sleep cycle. At the 24-hour mark, the human showed expected signs of fatigue, increased irritability, minor coordination issues, decreased cognitive processing speed. By 48 hours, I expected the standard cognitive collapse most species experience. Instead, Marcus was singing, 99 bottles of beer on the wall, 99 bottles of beer. Take one down, pass it around, 98 bottles of beer on the wall. What are you doing? I demanded over the intercom. Keeping myself awake, he replied, old camping trick. Want to join in? I know some great road trip songs too. At 72 hours, long after the Vindar delegates had hallucinated their ancestors coming to claim them, and the stoic Durante warriors had wept uncontrollably, Marcus Bennett was solving complex mathematical equations with only a 14% error rate. This is statistically impossible, I muttered, reviewing the data for the 5th time. Blip, run a toxicology scan. He must be secreting some form of natural stimulant. Clean readings, Dr. Blip reported. And, he's doing something strange again. I looked up to see Marcus staring intently at the blank wall, occasionally chuckling. What are you doing now? I demanded. Oh, just replaying the last season of Galactic Bake Off in my head, he said casually. The episode where they had to make Suffle in 0G was hilarious. You're voluntarily hallucinating for entertainment? I asked, mandibles twitching in confusion. It's called Daydreaming, Doc. Helps pass the time when there's nothing to do. Don't you ever just imagine stuff? I made a note. Subject displays alarming ability to self-generate sensory input when external stimulation is lacking. Possible evolutionary adaptation to isolation? Further study required. And now he's talking to himself, Blip observed. Indeed, Marcus had begun a mumbled conversation, complete with different voices and occasional laughter. I'm just running through some old arguments but winning them this time, he explained when questioned. Everyone does that, right? I stared at my assistant, who shrugged all 4 shoulders simultaneously. Absolutely not, I replied. That is decidedly not a universal behavior. This is becoming personally offensive, I muttered, reviewing the test results for the 5th time. 1 week into testing, and the human continued to defy statistical probability. My reputation as the Academy's leading xenophysiologist was being threatened by a pink-skinned bipe with an irritating propensity for humming. Prepare the environmental chamber for temperature extremes, I ordered Blip, perhaps more aggressively than necessary. Let's see how this chatty mammal handles thermal stress. Blip's eye stalks quivered nervously. Dr. Pax'lori, the standard protocol suggests gradual exposure, not jumping directly to. Are you questioning my methodology? I snapped, all 6 eyes narrowing. No, doctor. Preparing chamber now. Marcus entered the testing area with that infuriating bounce in his step. Morning, team. What's on the agenda today? More running? More puzzles? I've got to say, these tests are way more fun than those diplomatic briefings. Today we assess your temperature adaptability, I explained coldly. Most species have a survival range of approximately 15 degrees in either direction from their homeworld average. Cool. Or, hot, I guess? Bring it on. I started with cold exposure. As the chamber temperature plummeted to what should have been incapacitating levels, Marcus's body responded with an involuntary muscular response. Fascinating, I noted. Subject's locomotor system is generating heat through rapid, uncontrolled contractions. Mean shavering. Marcus's dental structures clacked together rhythmically. Pretty basic SS stuff, doc. Even more remarkable was his continued consciousness at temperatures that would render most species comatose. When we reversed to extreme heat, an even more disgusting adaptation occurred. Subject is leaking? I observed with horror as Marcus's skin became covered in a glistening layer of fluid. It's called sweating. He called out cheerfully, though his vital signs showed significant stress. Evaporative cooling. Humans are really good at temperature regulation. We evolved as persistence hunters on the savannah. You're secreting your internal fluids deliberately? That's revolting, says the guy with 6 eyes and mandibles, Marcus muttered, wiping his forehead. Just as I was noting his remarkable thermal adaptability, my laboratory door hissed open. Well, if it isn't the great Dr. Pax'lori torturing another specimen? I didn't need to turn around to recognize that honeyed voice dripping with false collegiality. Dr. Lumina Krell, what brings the Academy's preeminent xenoanthropologist to my humble laboratory? Shouldn't you be somewhere teaching primitives to use eating utensils? Dr. Krell glided into the room with her characteristic elegance, her silver-scaled skin catching the light. Unlike my practical exoskeleton, her species had evolved with unnecessary aesthetic features, bioluminescent patterns that shifted with her mood, yet currently displaying amused condescension. The director mentioned you had acquired a human subject. I've studied their transmissions extensively, and I simply had to observe one firsthand. She turned her attention to Marcus, who was now toweling off his disgusting secretions. Fascinating creatures, aren't they? Did you know they created over 47,000 distinct recipes just for a food item called sandwich? I'm conducting serious physiological research, Krell, not compiling a cookbook. Hey there, Marcus waved through the glass. Always nice to meet a fan of humanity. If you want to know about sandwiches, I make a killer BLT. Krell's scales flickered with delight. Charming, and surprisingly resilient, from what I'm seeing in these readings. Have you tested their dietary adaptability yet? I bristled. I'm following standard xenobiological protocols, which are woefully inadequate for omnivores of this caliber, she interrupted, examining my data. Humans can consume substances that would kill most species. Their digestive system neutralizes moderate toxins and processes incredible variety. Quite extraordinary, evolutionarily speaking. To demonstrate her point, she activated her data pad, displaying footage of humans willingly consuming capsaicin, ethanol, and various moldy food products. They eat things that are burning them and fermented to the point of toxicity? By choice? I couldn't hide my disgust. It's called spicy food and alcohol, Marcus chimed in. Friday night specials where I come from. Over the next several days, my frustration mounted as the human continued surpassing expectations. The pain threshold tests were particularly infuriating. Subject demonstrates heightened endurance to level 6 stimuli, I noted as Marcus withstood what should have been debilitating discomfort. This is nothing, he declared through gritted teeth. I stepped on a Lego once. That was pain. What is a Lego? I asked despite myself. Small plastic building block. roughly equivalent to walking on superheated plasma when barefoot. He's using humor as a neurological distraction technique, Dr. Krell observed, having invited herself to become a regular observer of our tests. Humans often employ cognitive strategies to override pain signals. Is that what he's doing? I snapped. I thought he was just being annoying. Marcus grinned despite the discomfort. Little column A, little column B, Doc, test cycle 15, endurance assessment phase 3, I dictated, trying to keep my voice steady despite my growing irritation. Subject will now undergo sustained locomotion evaluation. 2 weeks of testing, and my professional composure was hanging by a thread. Our human specimen had obliterated baseline expectations in every category. Worse, Dr. Krell had taken to appearing daily, cooing over each new human aberration like it was a charming pet trick. "Hey Doc, what's on the menu today?" Marcus asked, bouncing on his toes in the assessment chamber. "More toxicity tests? Because I gotta say, that hot sauce challenge yesterday was nothing. You should see what they serve at Buffalo Wild Wings." "Today we're conducting a simple sustained motion test," I explained. "Standard protocol for bipedal species. You'll continue walking until fatigue threshold is reached." "Oh, like a marathon?" His face lit up. "I used to run those back home. Personal best is 3 hours, 42 minutes. My mandibles clicked in annoyance. "This isn't a marathon. This is a carefully calibrated scientific assessment of locomotive endurance. The average sentient species reaches physical exhaustion after approximately 2 hours of sustained movement." Marcus shrugged. "Whatever you say, boss. Mind if I have some music?" Before I could refuse, Dr. Krell had already approved his request. "Absolutely. I've been studying human auditory stimulation patterns. Fascinating how rhythm improves their performance." 4 hours later, I was staring at the monitoring equipment in disbelief. The human was still running, having graduated from walking to a steady jog. His vital signs showed expected stress markers, but nowhere near shutdown levels. "This is statistically impossible," I muttered for perhaps the 100th time since testing began. On the contrary, came a deep, resonant voice behind me. "The statistical anomaly is precisely what makes this case so interesting." I turned to find Director Grav Torlax filling the laboratory doorway with his massive frame. The Academy's executive administrator rarely left the upper levels, yet here he was, all 4 arms clasped behind his back, observing our human subject with keen interest. "Director Torlax," I stammered, hastily straightening my lab coat, "I wasn't informed of your visit." When preliminary reports indicate a species breaking 7 different endurance records, I prefer to observe firsthand. He moved closer to the glass. "Is that what is the subject consuming?" I looked back to see Marcus squeezing some viscous, brightly colored substance into his mouth from a small packet. "Energy gel," Marcus called out between breaths. "Carbohydrate fuel. Tastes like synthetic fruit had a baby with industrial adhesive, but it keeps the engine running." "Disgusting," I muttered. "Pragmatic," corrected Director Torlax. "The ability to refuel while maintaining activity is remarkably efficient." Hour 6 arrived. Marcus had slowed to a walk again, his face flushed, breathing labored. Finally. "Evidence of normal physiological limitations. Subject appears to be approaching exhaustion threshold," I noted with poorly concealed satisfaction. "Projected collapse in approximately 15 minutes based on current vital trajectories." "Don't count on it," Dr. Krell murmured. "Look at his expression." The human's face had taken on a determined set. He wiped sweat from his brow, adjusted his posture, and inexplicably increased his pace. What's happening?" I demanded. His energy readings were bottoming out. "Second wind," Marcus gasped out, "now jogging again. Body mobilizes fat reserves after glycogen depletion. Impossible." I shrieked, abandoning all pretense of scientific detachment. "No species can access secondary energy reserves without rest and metabolic recovery." "Humans can," Director Torlax observed calmly. "Fascinating." By hour 8, I was pacing frantically around the laboratory, pulling at my cranial ridges while Marcus continued. Running? Increase gravity by 5%, I ordered blip. Dr. Pax'lori, that's outside protocol parameters, my assistant protested. Do it, I hissed. Marcus stumbled slightly but adjusted his gait and continued. Increase ambient temperature by 7 degrees. Really, Pax'lori, Dr. Krell admonished, this is becoming unprofessional. I ignored her, watching in mounting horror as the human compensated for each new obstacle. He removed his outer garment, increased his water intake, and just kept moving. Enough. I finally screamed, slamming all 6 hands onto the control panel. What will it take to reach your limits? What are you? Marcus finally stopped, not from exhaustion but simple confusion. Just a human? I'm not even particularly fit by our standards. My sister runs ultramarathons, 100-mile races through the desert. Now that's endurance. I stared at him, mandibles hanging slack, as Director Torlax made notes and Dr. Krell failed to suppress her smug expression. 100-mile desert, I repeated weakly, before sliding dramatically to the floor in what humans might call a nervous breakdown and what my species calls catastrophic professional dignity failure. Esteemed colleagues, I began, my voice only slightly quavering as I addressed the packed auditorium at the Galactic Academy's quarterly Xenobiological Symposium. Today I present findings from our study of human physiological endurance, which has challenged certain established paradigms. And that was putting it mildly. 3 weeks of testing had left me with data so absurd I'd checked our equipment for malfunctions 14 times. Dr. Krell sat in the front row, her scales shimmering with barely contained amusement. Director Torlax occupied an oversized seat nearby, watching with inscrutable attention. And there, off to the side, stood Marcus Bennett, looking utterly ordinary and completely out of place among the galaxy's most distinguished scientists. As you can see from these charts, I continued, projecting a series of graphs. Human endurance capabilities exceed predicted parameters by an average of 327% across all testing categories. A tentacled Cerealian in the third row waved dismissively. Dr. Pax'lori, with all due respect, these results are clearly anomalous. Your testing methodology must be flawed. That was my initial conclusion as well, Professor Xilix, I replied stiffly. We recalibrated all equipment and repeated tests with identical results. Perhaps you simply acquired a genetically enhanced specimen? Suggested Dr. Yanok, his bioluminescent cranial sacs pulsing skeptically. Marcus stepped forward before I could respond. Nope, just a regular human. Not even particularly athletic by our standards. Played some college lacrosse, do a bit of hiking on weekends. Murmurs rippled through the audience. I cleared my throat nervously. To demonstrate one particularly unusual human characteristic, we've prepared a practical demonstration of what they call stress-induced hysterical strength, a temporary ability to exceed normal physical limitations in emergency situations. 2 assistants wheeled out the Academy's standard hydraulic press, calibrated to measure force exertion. Under normal conditions, I explained, the subject can exert approximately 200 newtons of force, which is unexceptional. However, when subjected to simulated emergency conditions. I nodded to Blipk, who activated a recording of what humans called a baby crying, a sound which apparently triggered protective instincts. We'd discovered this accidentally when testing auditory responses. The change in Marcus was immediate and alarming. His pupils dilated, respiration increased, and he gripped the hydraulic handles with sudden intensity. Must save. Baby, he growled through clenched teeth, muscles bulging as he pulled against the machine's resistance. The force meter climbed rapidly, 300 newtons, 500. The audience gasped as warning lights flashed on the equipment. That's enough. I called out, but too late. With a shriek of protesting metal, something inside the million-credit testing apparatus snapped. Marcus stumbled backward, holding a piece of the machine that had completely detached. Sorry about that, he said sheepishly, as hydraulic fluid pooled on the stage. Is the baby okay? A shocked silence fell over the auditorium, broken only by Dr. Krell's delighted slow clap. Professor Zilks rose from his seat, all four eye stalks fully extended in alarm. This is preposterous. No sentient species could evolve such capabilities without evolving on a death world, Director Torlax finished gravely. That is precisely what makes this discovery so significant. I displayed the next slide data about Earth that had initially seemed like translation errors, crushing gravity, extreme temperature variations, atmospheric oxygen levels that would be considered toxic on many worlds, radiation from their sun that would kill most species, catastrophic weather events, and predators that would give nightmares to the fiercest Chaldavian warriors. Humanity evolved on a planet that would qualify as a Class 9 death world by our classification standards, I admitted. Their normal is our unsurvivable. It's really not that bad, Marcus protested. I mean, sure, Australia has some scary spiders, but they call venomous arthropods capable of neurotoxic assassination scary spiders, I interjected, as an amusing footnote. I took a deep breath and displayed my final slide, my formal recommendation to the Academy. Based on comprehensive analysis, I hereby propose that humans be classified in a new xenobiological category. They defy our conventional taxonomic system and must be understood as evolutionary outliers adapted to conditions most advanced species would find lethal. The auditorium erupted in chaotic debate, but I had finally achieved a strange sense of peace. My data wasn't flawed. My methods weren't questionable. The universe had simply presented me with a species so improbably resilient that it broke our scientific models. And somehow, that was easier to accept than admitting I'd been wrong. The symposium's aftermath found me in the Academy's grand atrium, surrounded by colleagues who had suddenly developed an intense interest in my research. After years of being the xenobiologist everyone politely avoided at faculty gatherings, I was now the center of attention. It was almost as exhausting as dealing with the human. But what evolutionary advantage could possibly come from consuming capsaicin? Professor Zilks was asking, still trying to make sense of humanity's inexplicable traits. Before I could answer, Marcus chimed in. He'd become something of a celebrity and was enjoying it far too much. It's not just about physical advantages, he explained, munching on a nutrient cube that he'd somehow convinced the dispensary to cover in hot sauce. A lot of human endurance comes from psychological traits, like stubborn determination. Elaborate on this concept, Director Torlax requested, recording the conversation. Marcus grinned. It's when we decide we're going to do something, and then we just keep doing it, long after it makes sense to stop. Like climbing mountains. There's no practical reason to climb mountains. They're cold, dangerous, and have terrible Wi-Fi. But humans see a mountain and think, I'm going to put my body on top of that rock, even if it nearly kills me. Fascinating, murmured Dr. Krell. A compulsion toward meaningless achievement. Sometimes, Marcus agreed. But often it's even simpler. Sometimes we do things out of spite. Spite? I repeated. Your translator must be malfunctioning. Nope. Spite. When someone says we can't do something and we do it specifically to prove them wrong. He pointed at me. Like when Dr. Pax'lori kept increasing the difficulty of the tests. Each time he looked more annoyed that I hadn't collapsed, the more determined I became not to. I realized with horror that I had inadvertently been triggering some primal human response pattern throughout our testing. You're saying you exceeded normal human capabilities to annoy me? Pretty much. Marcus beamed. Spite is a powerful motivator. Humans have achieved some of our greatest accomplishments because someone said it was impossible. Director Torlax's deep laughter echoed through the atrium. I believe we have found the perfect species for our deep space exploration initiative. A creature that views lethal environments as a personal challenge, invaluable. Over the following weeks, humans were quickly integrated into various academy programs. Their unique physiological and psychological traits made them ideal for roles that other species found too demanding or dangerous. The diplomatic corps was particularly eager to add humans to first contact teams after learning of their adaptability. As for me, I became the Academy's leading expert on human physiology, a dubious honor that ensured my research calendar was perpetually full and my patients perpetually tested. I even developed something approaching a professional rapport with Marcus, who had been hired as a consultant. "I've been meaning to ask," I said during one of our final sessions before he returned to Earth to recruit more human subjects. "Are there any areas where humans do have physiological limitations? Any weaknesses I should document?" "Well, we're not great with extreme pressure changes. Our vision is pretty limited compared to some species, and our hearing range is pathetically narrow," he admitted. "Oh, and we have this weird design flaw where our breathing and eating tubes cross, so we occasionally choke on food." "Fascinating. Such a bizarre evolutionary compromise," I noted, feeling slightly vindicated. "And what about endurance variations among your species? I assume you were selected as an exemplary specimen." Marcus laughed so hard he nearly fell off his chair. "Me? No way. I'm completely average. You should meet my friend Diana. She ran across America, the whole continent. Or Michael Phelps, the guy's basically half fish. Those freediving people who can hold their breath for like 10 minutes. I felt my mandibles go slack. You're average? Totally middle of the road. The Academy probably thought they were getting a representative sample." He patted my exoskeletal shoulder sympathetically. "If it makes you feel better, Doc, your tests would have broken most humans too." "But not all," I said weakly. "Not even close," he grinned. "There are humans who run 100-mile races through Death Valley for fun. It's called ultramarathoning. They do it on weekends." As Marcus continued cheerfully listing increasingly terrifying human endurance feats, I made a silent vow my next research subject would be something sensible. Perhaps those crystalline entities from the methane seas of Titan IV, or the sentient gas clouds of the Horsehead Nebula. Anything but humans. One glimpse into that particular evolutionary madhouse was quite enough for my academic career. And yet, as I finalized my report, I couldn't help but include a personal note. Despite their many biological absurdities and psychological peculiarities, humans display a remarkable quality that defies scientific quantification, an inexplicable drive to exceed limitations simply because they exist. It is simultaneously the most irrational and most admirable trait I have encountered in any species. I paused, then added, "Further research is warranted."